Looks like we've got a good group coming in to join us today. Let's get started. Well, welcome everyone. I'm Megan McKinney, the Associate Director of the Duck Career Network in the UO Alumni Association. Part of the mission of the Duck Career Network is to offer career resources and programs to alumni at all career stages, as well as encourage UO students to gain career readiness mindsets through connecting with our alumni. We hope to build a community of like-minded ducks seeking and sharing career advice and insights and making new professional connections. And as part of that mission, I'm happy to introduce today's program, Interview with Flair, led by Lisa Poliak. Lisa earned an international studies degree from the U of O. She founded Inner Genius Prep, a boutique career and educational consulting company in 2009 after receiving her MFA in creative writing from a top 10 program and working as a writer and editor. Lisa brings her holistic approach of less stress, more success to all of her clients, empowering them to present their best selves and authentically shine by creating standout resumes and acing interviews to land their dream jobs. The through line that connects all of her work is listening to, guiding, and supporting her clients so they break through any barriers and achieve their goals and do it all with less stress than they would have thought possible. So in today's program, Lisa is going to cover how to connect with your interviewer, how to listen intentionally, authentically sell your strengths, and brag about yourself the right way, as well as how to discuss your weaknesses, your past mistakes, and your failures, and how to avoid interviewing pitfalls and handle those tricky questions that can really stump us all. So throughout the program, remember to use the Q&A feature located at the bottom of your screen to submit questions for Lisa. We are going to get to as many of them as we can towards the end of the program. And so with that, I'm going to hand it over to Lisa to get started. Thank you for being here, Lisa.
Thank you so much for having me, Megan. And I really just want to thank everyone for being here. I know you're taking your lunch hour to be here with me, and that means a lot. And feel free to eat your lunch. No one can see you. So I want to make sure that before we get started, everybody has a notebook or a pen and paper next to them, because we're actually going to be doing some quick interactive exercises today to help you start preparing to interview with Flair right now. And as you can see, I'm coming at you from the beautiful Hawaiian island of Maui. No, not really. I'm in Santa Monica, California, where I'm based, but this is a picture that I took when I was in Maui. And you can see Molokini, the little island, in the background. And the reason I use this photo as my background is because it's very relaxing to look at the ocean. And I want everyone to feel relaxed today to absorb as much information as possible. And when you interview, I want you to feel relaxed and confident so that you can be comfortable and you can be charismatic. So how do you shine when you go into an interview? The most important thing is to be prepared. Proper preparation is the key to success. And the idea of preparation may not sound sexy, but preparing is really what allows you to highlight your strengths, to know what you're going to talk about, to have your talking points prepared with specific takeaways of what you want to highlight about yourself. And then you don't have to worry about what you're going to say, and you can concentrate on connecting with your interviewer. You'll be ready to handle whatever questions they throw at you, and you're more likely to ace the interview and not get thrown off because you won't falter because you don't know what to say. And if you do get a question that you don't know what to say, today I am going to teach you the very best technique to handle that. And as I lead you through the insights I want to share with you, I'm going to cover the best ways to prepare, the questions you can expect in any interview, and how to avoid pitfalls and navigate tricky questions. So when you go into an interview, it truly is all about connecting. The number one most important thing you can do in an interview is make a personal connection with your interviewer. Yes, you're there to show that you're qualified, but even if you have all the skills and experience required for the job, you are unlikely to get hired if you don't make a personal connection with your interviewer. So, how do you do this? People want to work with people they like. So it is very important that when you go into your interview, you are warm and you are friendly. Even though you want to be professional, you don't want to be cold and so-called businesslike, because people want to work with people they like. And the best way to connect with people is to talk to them like you already know them. This is the secret sauce to having charisma. And so when you're able to walk into your interview and talk to your interviewer like they're your peer, like there's someone that you could grab a coffee with or get drinks after work or do something social on the weekend, that's how you're really going to make a personal connection with them. And human connection trumps hierarchy every time. You may go into your interview and you may be worried about the person's title or where they are on the corporate ladder in comparison to yourself. But what you have to remember is, because people want to work with people they like, regardless of what their title is, regardless of what kind of job you're applying for, you need to focus on connecting to them as a person. And there's a reason that so many business deals happen over golf games and over drinks and power lunches, because people want to work with people they like. I can't say that enough. So being warm and likable is equally important as being qualified. If you're qualified, but you're not likable, you're guaranteed not to get the job. And if it seems hard for you to talk to people you don't know, like you already know them, because this is a skill that doesn't come naturally to everyone, I'm going to show you a quick exercise right now. So I would like everyone to just take a moment and close their eyes. And then I want you to take a big breath in. Think about everything that came before this moment, everything that came before noon today, anything stressful that happened, anything you were worried about. And then I want you to breathe in and let it out with a big, loud sigh. Good. Then I want you to take another breath in, and I want you to think about everything that's going to happen after 1 o'clock today when this webinar is over, anything you're anticipating, anything you feel stressed out about, and I want you to just let it out with a big sigh. So take a breath in. Good. Now I want you to take one more breath in, and I want you to just center down into this now moment and just be here, present right now. Now I want you to take your left hand and put it on top of your heart, and then take your right hand and put it on top of your left hand. And I want you to consciously drop down from your head into your heart and imagine that you're breathing in and out through your heart. And as you're breathing in and out through your heart, I want you to think about a time when there was something that you thought you couldn't do, and then you did it and you felt amazing. So just let something bubble up in your consciousness right now. And just focus on that time you thought you couldn't do something and you did it and it was amazing. And just keep focusing on that feeling of, I did it, I did it. And if other thoughts come up, just let them go and keep focusing on that feeling of, I did it. And then I want you to take that feeling of accomplishment and I want you to multiply it by 10. So it's 10 times stronger. And you can feel that sense of accomplishment filling the entire room where you're sitting. Good. Very gently, very slowly, bring your attention back to the chair where you're sitting and very gently open your eyes. I always feel amazing when I do that. I love doing that, and I hope that you feel amazing too. And that's a great thing you can do before you walk into your interview to shift your energy and get into that positive energy and that feeling of accomplishment. Because the thing is, physiologically, your body does not know the difference between when you are imagining something and it's actually happening. So when you remember a time when you accomplished something you thought you couldn't do and you feel so good, your body feels like that's actually happening. And then you walk into the interview with that positive energy. So I highly recommend everyone do that. And I also recommend that when you're practicing for your interviews and you're doing the techniques we're going to talk about today and preparing for the questions that you know you can expect in an interview, if you feel nervous or anxious while you're preparing, you do that exercise. And there's another thing that you can start doing right now today to also build your charisma and make it easier for you to talk to strangers in a job interview like you already know them. And that's to start talking to other strangers, not in a job interview like you know them, starting right now today. That might sound a little wacky, but think about it. An interview is a high stakes situation. Talking to strangers that you encounter throughout your day is a very low stakes situation. You have nothing to lose. And the more that you start practicing this skill and developing this skill of talking to strangers, it's going to build your confidence, it's going to build your magnetism, and it's going to build your charisma. Because no one wants to work with someone who can get the job done, but they can't see themselves talking about anything besides work. So it's so important that you focus on that warmth and that likability. And communication is key here. Employers have consistently stated in surveys that the number one skill, soft skill that they're looking for that potential hires are lacking is communication skills, both verbal and written communication skills. And your interview is a wonderful opportunity for you to showcase your verbal communication skills. You also need to just be present and listen. And that is something that we're going to cover in the next section. The other thing that you need to do is really prepare by doing your research. And this is going to allow you to connect in the interview as well. You need to think what makes you a good fit to work at the company and what you like about them. In your interview, you need to mention specifics about the value that the company offers to its clients or customers. When I was interviewing for a new administrative assistant about 4 years ago, when I interviewed my current assistant, she mentioned to me during the interview that she had 2 college-age kids and that they had worked with an educational consultant like me and how invaluable the service had been. And that made me know that she understood the value that my company offers and that she had a personal connection with my industry. You also need to really research and think about the culture of the company and what makes you a good fit with the culture. When I was interviewing potential essay coaches, I had a candidate I was very interested in who was qualified, and I was planning on probably hiring her. But then during the interview, she made it very clear that she preferred a corporate environment. And I have a small business. It's not a corporate environment. So she let me know during the interview that she was not going to be a good fit for the culture of my company. I then interviewed another equally qualified candidate, and she kept talking about how she had worked for other small businesses in the past and how much she liked what she called the family feel of a small business. I had actually never heard that, and I loved that when she said the family feel. And that let me know that she was going to be a good fit for the culture of my company. So it is so important that you listen well when you're in an interview. Listening skills are something that we are never taught in school. I never had a listening skills class in my life when I got my bachelor's or my master's. And so I'm going to talk to you right now about the right way to listen. Being present in the moment, not thinking about what you're going to say next, not worrying about what you just said, and maybe you should have said something differently, and not anticipating what your interviewer is going to ask you next is really being present in the moment. And I'm sure you felt many times when you were talking that people weren't really listening to you, because most people, when someone else is talking, they're waiting for their turn to talk and they're thinking about what they're going to say next. And when you're talking to someone and they're doing this, you can feel it, and it doesn't feel good. It feels frustrating, honestly, when you're talking to someone and you're sharing with someone and you know they're just waiting for their turn to talk. No one likes that feeling, and yet it's the norm. And so when you are able to really be present and just listen to your interviewer without being stuck in your head, they feel it. They feel that energy, just like they feel when you walk into the room with that warm confidence and connect with them instantly, like they are your friend. They also feel when you are really present and listening. So it is so important to do that. You can only connect when you're present, not when you're stuck in your head. An important part of being present is actively listening. Actively listening is extremely simple. It just means that while your interviewer is talking to you, you maintain eye contact. Of course, you can blink, you can do normal things. You don't want to stare at them. And you need to sometimes nod your head and say, to acknowledge that you hear what they're saying, but you don't want to overdo it with this. And you will be able to respond better and more thoughtfully when you've truly heard what your interviewer has said. If you don't understand something your interviewer says, whether you actually didn't hear them or you didn't understand, you need to ask for clarification. I cannot emphasize enough how important this is. Asking for clarification shows confidence. It shows you're listening attentively, and it can save you from blowing an interview because you don't know what your interviewer just asked you, and yet you try to answer anyway. When I was 25, after I graduated from U of O as an international studies major, I moved to New York to go to grad school. I landed an interview to be a speechwriter to the Turkish ambassador at the UN. It was a dream job for me. I was so excited. And I went into the first interview with the ambassador's assistant, and I nailed it. I was confident, I was excited, I had the right skills. We really connected. And he said to me, Lisa, you're the top candidate for the job, which of course boosted my confidence. Then I went into the second interview with the ambassador himself. His office was huge. I had never been in such a big office in my life. And his desk was massive. And I was seated really far across the room from him. He was also a really quiet talker. I was so intimidated. And I did not get probably at least 50% of what he said to me during the interview, but I was too intimidated to say, excuse me, or I'm sorry, I didn't understand what you said. Can you repeat that? So every time the ambassador would finish talking and I didn't know what he had said to me, I would just nod and smile. Well, I blew it. I didn't get the job. And I was crestfallen. I had made such a good connection with his assistant. His assistant actually took the time to call me and he said, Lisa, what happened? You were the top candidate for the job. And I said, I couldn't hear the ambassador when he was talking, and I was too afraid to say, excuse me. So in addition to listening, it's very important that you brag about yourself the right way. And many people feel uncomfortable talking about their accomplishments because they think that somehow makes them egotistical or sounds like they're stuck up. But that is absolutely false because the point of a job interview is to be able to show why you're qualified and show why you're a right fit for the job. And so you have to be able to talk about your accomplishments. So you need to remember that being authentic and selling yourself are not contradictory. And the way to brag about yourself right and to showcase why you should be hired is you need to share specific stories with specific takeaways. You have to remember that when you're authentically discussing your accomplishments and you're able to share what you've contributed in the past, you have a sense of joy and excitement and gratitude, and that's infectious. When I think about things I've helped my clients do, I feel so proud of them and proud that I was able to help them, and I feel so happy. And that sense of joy and accomplishment, just like you were feeling doing the visualization, is really contagious. And so you want to have that feeling when you're talking about your accomplishments, because everyone wants to hire someone who's going to be passionate about their work. Everyone wants to hire someone who's going to be excited about the job and excited about excelling at the job. So when you're preparing the stories that you're going to tell during your interview, when they ask you questions, you want to prepare 2 to 3 stories with very specific takeaways about what your role was in achieving measurable results that you can share. You don't want to share stories with vague takeaways. You want to share stories that you can really talk specifically about what you did. And so you need to prepare 2 to 3 anecdotes to do this. This is something that I often work with my coaching clients on and help them really practice telling the stories naturally, because the last thing you want to do is sound like you're reciting from a script. So right now we're going to do our first interactive exercise, and it's only going to take 1 minute. I want everyone to grab their notebook or paper, and I'm going to give you just 1 minute to jot down ideas about stories you can share that have specific takeaways. And don't worry if what you think of right now isn't perfect. This is just to get you going, and you can work on it more later. Okay, ready? Go. Okay, you have 30 seconds left. Okay, that's 1 minute. So please wrap up what you're writing. And you can definitely go back to that later and keep brainstorming. The other thing that you need to do to brag the right way is you need to acknowledge team efforts. And that will also keep you from sounding egotistical. Almost every job on the planet, no matter what it is, involves teamwork. Even if you're managing a big team and you're in charge, you're still part of the team, or you're on a team playing a role in the team. So when you're sharing your accomplishments, you want to definitely acknowledge the role your colleagues played in helping you succeed and how you worked as part of a team, so they know that you're a team player and that you do work well as part of a team. There are many common interviewing pitfalls that it's easy to avoid with the right preparation. The first one is being vague, and I know that no one here today is going to have that problem because we're all going to prepare specific stories with specific takeaways. The second one is selling past the close. And as simple as it sounds, many people, and I have certainly been guilty of this, Keep talking after they finish making their point, which soon turns into rambling. When I was in my 20s and I had blown the interview at the UN, I ended up getting a job working as an assistant while I was in grad school. And my boss told me that I needed to learn not to sell past the close. If you're not familiar with this expression, it means that once you've made your point, you need to stop talking. We were not a sales business. She was teaching me an invaluable lesson about my communication style. And my old boss told me sometimes when you sell past the close, you lose the sale. In the context of an interview, this means that when you're sharing your stories with specific takeaways, once you finish and you've made your point, you need to stop talking. I've worked with many people that really struggle with this. They prepare really great stories, they tell their story, but then when they finish talking, or no, when they don't finish talking, excuse me, when they finish their point, they keep talking. And just like when you sell past the close, you lose past the sale, you lose the sale. When you've made your point and then you keep talking, you undo your point. And so once you've gotten your point across, you need to let the interviewer respond. They might want to ask a clarifying question. They might want to make a comment. They might want to go on to their next question. The other big pitfall that I see many people have is being afraid to pause. This is huge because most people know you need to go into the interview prepared, you need to go into the interview confident. And then if they get a question they don't know what to say, they're afraid to pause. They don't know what to do, and so they just start talking. And if you start motor mouthing and talking when you don't know what you're going to say, you're not going to give an effective answer. And so while it may seem counterintuitive, the best thing to do if you get a question that you don't know what to say is to say, that's a really great question. Please give me a moment to think about it. And then stop, pause, think about it. That is going to show enormous confidence to your interviewer because only a person who is truly confident would be able to do that. Even if in that moment you don't feel truly confident because you're scared, because you don't know what to say, by responding like that, you're going to project confidence. And then once you've had a moment to collect your thoughts, you can answer with clarity and confidence. There's several kinds of questions that you can expect in any interview. And the worst kind of interview opener or first date opener is, so Lisa, tell me about yourself. And that is so vague. I think it's a terrible question because it doesn't give you any focus for how to respond. However, it is very common in interviews. And so what you need to do to handle that question is you need to prepare ahead of time what you're going to say if they do go, so tell me about yourself. And you want to have a couple short, specific takeaways to share. For example, you can say, I love working with people and I thrive in a team environment. I'm a self-starter, but I also take feedback well. So right now, I want you to take 1 minute and I want you to jot down ideas about what you might say for a tell me about yourself question. Ready? Go. Okay, you have 30 seconds left. Okay, that's 1 minute. Great. And remember, when you're writing the tell me about yourself answers, you want to tailor it to the job as much as possible. And for the following questions, you need to think about these things in advance and prepare for what you want to talk about based on the specifics of the company and the specifics of the role. Why do you want to work here? Why are you a good fit? And then this one isn't on the slide, but it's very common, which is what's your greatest strength or what's your greatest professional accomplishment? And they may ask you one of those, or they may ask you both of those. So again, I'm going to give you 1 minute right now, and I want you to brainstorm some ideas about your greatest strength or professional accomplishment. Ready? Go. Okay, you have about 30 seconds left. Okay, that's 1 minute. The other question that you are guaranteed to be asked in any interview is, do you have any questions for us? And the wrong answer to that is no. You need to have at least 2 questions prepared that are specific about the company and about the role. If you don't have any questions prepared, it's going to look like you're not serious about the job and you haven't taken time to do your research about the company. So you can ask questions like, what do you think is the greatest reward of this position? What do you think is the greatest challenge of this position? What kind of opportunities for growth will I have in this role or at this company? And of course, you need to tailor these questions as much as possible to specifics about the company and the job. It is possible that you will have prepared your questions and they will answer them during the course of the interview. So if that happens, when they say, do you have any questions? If they already answered them, do not just say no. Say, actually, I did have a couple of questions, but you were so thorough, you already answered them. I was wondering about X and Y, but you already answered, thank you. And then that way they know that you did prepare and that you did have questions for them, which is really important to show your interest in the company. Now we're going to talk about handling the dreaded tricky questions. You are almost guaranteed, just like they're going to ask, what's your greatest strength, that they're going to ask, what's your biggest weakness? And there is a surefire technique for handling this. You need to prepare to talk about a weakness that you can still cast in a positive light. For example, about myself, when I used to interview, I would always say, well, I can be too detail oriented and I need to keep the big picture in mind. That is a completely honest answer because I am very detail oriented. I'm a perfectionist. I want everything done right. And that's a good quality because employers don't want someone who's going to be sloppy or let things fall through the cracks. However, a really detail-oriented person actually can lose the big picture. And so I was able to give that answer very honestly and authentically and talk about a real weakness I have, but something that also can be positive. And so you always want to find something like that about yourself to talk about. And you never, ever want to share a weakness that is just a weakness that you cannot cast in a positive light. They also are very likely to ask you, tell me about a time you failed. And the point of this question is to talk about what you learned and what you would do differently next time. This is how you turn a negative into a positive. Because talking about what you learned from past failures and mistakes and what you would do differently next time demonstrates that you have a growth mindset. And this is something that all employers want. This shows emotional intelligence. It shows that you can reflect on your past mistakes and learn from them, and that you'll be able to grow within the company. So this is our last interactive exercise. Let's take one more minute, and I'm going to have you just jot down some ideas about a failure and what you learned and what you would do differently next time. Ready? Go. Okay, you have about 30 seconds left. Okay, that's 1 minute. Great. So the number one most important thing that I want you to come away from this today with, and that I want you to go into all of your interviews with, is a sense of authentic confidence. Remember, confidence is charismatic, it's contagious, and it's magnetic. I like to say confidence gets paid, because being genuinely confident and likable will help you land the job every time. And as we've seen, the level of confidence that you're able to go into any job interview with is directly correlated to the amount of preparation you put in. So you need to prepare, and prepare some more. And that also means not just thinking about what you're going to say, but practicing saying it. So this is something that I also often do with my coaching clients. I help them brainstorm on answers and know what they're going to say to answer every kind of question, but then I also help them practice and do mock interviews with them. And this is so important, not only for even the words you're going to say, but also for your body language. Because often people are communicating things with their body language that they don't want to be, and that go against the message they're trying to communicate. So the more you prepare, the more you practice, the more you're going to go into any interview relaxed and confident, being able to focus on connecting and ace the interview and land the job. So thank you so much. I'm going to hand it back over to Megan, and then we're going to take some questions.
Thank you so much, Lisa. I'm just going to flip my video back on here. And yes, we had a lot of questions come in through the registration form, as well as now live in the Q&A. They're rolling in. So here's a question that came in. What is the best way to address those long gaps in employment history?
That's a great question, and that's a very common issue. So just like everything else, you need to prepare and you need to have a narrative ahead of time for what you're going to say, because employers certainly will ask you about that. And that has happened to many of my clients. And it can be a red flag to employers if you don't have a good reason for that. So if it was something like you had a child and you took time off to have a child, or you had a sick parent and you had to care for your sick parent, it's completely fine to share that openly. If it was something like you were having some kind of real personal struggles that are something that you may not want to share during the interview, then you want to just be a little more vague and be, say something like, well, there were some issues going on in my family, or there were some issues going on in my life, but fortunately, everything's good now. Really focus on that. You always want to have the positive takeaway. And now I'm ready to jump back in. So you just want to make sure you have an explanation. Like every other thing I talked about, you don't want to get caught off guard. But people understand that things happen and people have crises in their life, or people have babies or move around, or life happens. And so it's totally fine to have an employment gap. You just need to make sure you're prepared to talk about it.
Thank you. Let's see here. We've got a lot of great questions. Here's a good one. Where is the line between being too honest and genuine versus stretching the truth and even lying in an interview?
Oh, that is such a great question. Whoever asked that, thank you so much. I love that question. And people ask me that a lot. So when you're writing your resume, you can really put things in a positive light to stretch, not stretch the truth, but definitely cast everything the best light you possibly can. And in an interview, you want to do that as well, but you never want to outright lie. And what you need to remember is anything that can be fact checked on your resume or in an interview, you absolutely cannot exaggerate. So you want to make sure you cast things in a really positive light and really talk about yourself positively, like I've been talking about this entire time, but don't exaggerate to the point that if they called your old job and asked for a reference and they said, oh, Lisa said she single-handedly brought us from 1,000 to 500,000 social media followers. Did that really happen? And they're going to say no. So just make sure, think about whether it's something that they can really be checked on, and also that you feel comfortable saying it. Because one thing is, if you tell an untruth, you have to always keep that going forever. So it's better to just really think about the accomplishments you truly have and how to make them sound the best you can.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Let's see here. Someone sent in this question. I am an older 61-year-old job hunter who earned my master's in education last year and have found it extremely difficult to get a job. I had a long-term sub job last school year, but it ended in March. I was an exceptional student and have lots of real-world experience, but I applied for 8 jobs this summer and got 4 interviews, but no offers. How do I get employees to see past my age? I have no plans to retire at 67 or even 70.
Oh, that's a great question. And actually, coincidentally, I had a client with the exact same situation, because she went back to school and she got her EDD in global education from USC when she was about 60. And one thing you have to realize, and this is just a hard truth, is ageism is real, and it's a real problem in our society. So you're not crazy for thinking that your age is keeping some people from giving you a chance. However, what you need to realize is that you have to keep trying, and the right employer is going to recognize that you have more skills and experience than a younger person, and that you actually can provide something different than someone younger could. Another thing you can do that I suggest is, on your resume, take off the dates of your degrees, because if your college degree is decades ago, they're going to know how old you are. And then if you have that your master's was last year, they'll know you just got it. And so people tend to furnish a lot of information that they don't need to, and they actually shouldn't, in my opinion. And the minute you look at anyone's LinkedIn or their resume and they have their graduation year for their undergraduate, you can immediately, within a couple of years, know how old they are. So I would actually just suggest that you take that off of your resume. And then if the age issue does come up during the interview, or even if it doesn't, you can just kind of talk about, how much you love working in this field, how excited you are to have earned this EDD, and how you see yourself having a long career. And you can just say subtle things that indicate that you're not planning on retiring anytime soon. And if I can just add one quick thing, my client, it did take her a long time to get a job, and she was getting discouraged, but she ended up landing a job that was so perfect for her, that she absolutely loved, that was quite prestigious. And so you just need to keep trying and know that the right employer will recognize your skills.
Thank you. I'm going to ask you a question from our Q&A feature down here that came in during the presentation. Someone asked, some disabilities make it very difficult for candidates to focus and be present or process questions auditorily. I know several people with ADHD or autism who said they've failed in their interviews because of these issues, despite being highly qualified otherwise. In such cases, is it appropriate for them to ask for interview questions in advance as accommodation, as this might help them have their answers ready to go and avoid any awkwardness? Note, most of these people also said they wouldn't want to disclose such a disability in advance because they fear discrimination, stigma. How realistic is their fear?
That's a great question, and I'm certainly not an expert on this, but I know as I've been working with a couple of recent clients, every single application that you go to fill out online, when you go to apply through Indeed or LinkedIn or whatever, it makes you fill out a whole American Disabilities Act thing, and you have to check, or they're asking you to check. And so I think this is a bit of a catch-22, because you can't ask to get the questions in advance if you're not going to disclose that you have the disability. But it also is, illegal to discriminate for having a disability. And I'm not a lawyer and I'm not an expert on this at all, but I think there are some kind of laws about certain corporations of a certain size possibly having to hire a certain amount of people with disabilities and a certain amount of veterans. So I would say if you're comfortable disclosing it and it's going to be a problem for you in the interview, it doesn't hurt to ahead of time let them know. And especially, if you have an auditory processing problem, that makes it very hard to do an interview where you're just getting the questions, because some people, don't process well, some people process visually, some people kinesthetic. And so I would say the best thing to do to set yourself up for success is to talk to them ahead of time about it and say, this is my situation, can I get an accommodation? But again, you may want to consult with someone who's a lawyer, who's an expert on the ADA, because I actually am not.
Gotcha. Great, thank you. Oh, here's a good one. If I'm going into a professional interview, but don't have work experience other than food service, and can't think of a major success or failure, how can I prepare to sell myself when I don't have much experience in the field I'm interviewing for, or much experience in professional settings? And I think this is a great question for younger folks right out of college, perhaps, who are going into their first job, and how can they tell their story and showcase their experiences when perhaps they haven't had much experience in a professional setting just yet?
That's a great question too, Megan. And I would say if you're, a recent college grad, you want to think about other areas in your life where you can talk about the same things we talked about. So maybe you can talk about a project at school. Maybe you can talk about responsibilities within your family. Maybe you were caring for younger siblings or an older parent. Maybe you did an honors thesis before you graduated that was a massive amount of work. I did that when I was at U of L. And just think about other things that you can talk about that aren't necessarily, because if you've only done food service, right, it's not going to transfer over. But also another thing you need to remember is that any job you've had when you're a younger person looks good, because a lot of people go through school without ever working, who have the privilege to do that. And so if you have worked those kind of, paying your dues jobs, those jobs are not easy. And those take a lot of skills to be able to do it, and a lot of work ethic and customer service skills to be able to deal with people. And so I would really focus on those things. You could even talk about, some of the challenges you might have had on a job with a, challenging customer. Don't talk about a challenging boss, though, because you never want to say bad things about your prior employers. But I think what you really need to do is just cast a really wide net when you're brainstorming and think about different life experiences you can talk about. They don't necessarily have to be professional, but ways that you have accomplished things and succeeded, and also challenges you've had and how you've handled them.
Great response. Thanks.
Thank you.
We've got a few minutes left, so let's see if we can squeeze in maybe two more questions. Is it acceptable to ask for the salary range before applying for a job? I don't want to waste their time if it's not going to financially work for me.
I wouldn't. I would go on Glassdoor. I would try to, don't ask straight up. Don't ask straight up, because that's like, before you go on a date, asking someone, if they're going to want to marry you down the road or something. I would not do that. I think that's a turnoff. And I think that when I'm interviewing people and they bring up the money right away, I feel very turned off. And so what I would do, there are a lot of resources today that you can find out a lot of information. And so I would look on Glassdoor, which that would be the first place I would look. I would search the web, see what kind of resources you can find. And I would wait until they're prepared to make you an offer. And also on LinkedIn, depending on what kind of jobs you're looking for, the salary range is often listed. But to me, it'd be a red flag if someone brings that up too fast.
Gotcha. We had a few questions come in related to the tell me about yourself question, which is, so hard. It's just one of the hardest questions to answer, really is. And so I'm going to just kind of go through, a few of these. Maybe we can combine them into one question. It seems that several folks were wondering how much you really need to share about yourself in that question. So for example, someone asked if they should include general academic work background as well as their personal story. How do you balance that? Someone asked, how do I differentiate the tell me about yourself answer to the what is your greatest strength answer? Let's see if there was one more that came in here. Yeah, someone asked, if you should share your hobbies in hopes that maybe they'll relate to the interviewer. So I wonder if you have any more thoughts around crafting an answer to that tricky question, and how much do you divulge? How much do you share?
Those are all great questions. And that's why I say that is the worst question and the worst way to start a date. So don't overshare. You want to keep it brief. You want to leave them wanting more. And as far as your hobbies, I normally suggest that people on their resume put skills and interests at the bottom. And the reason to do that is for them to make small talk with you at the interview and be like, oh, Megan, you're into yoga? I do yoga too. What kind of yoga do you do? But I think to bring up your hobbies in a job interview is not really relevant if it's just to tell me about yourself. And I think that if you try to cover too much ground, it will turn into rambling and you're going to lose them. And so the greatest strength question, you can expand more during that time. If it's something that you answer a little bit and then tell me about yourself, you can really expand upon it and tell a story with the greatest strength. But I would say you want to keep it brief.
Great. Let's see, we've got 1 minute left. I really want to address this one question that just came in. Somebody asked, let's see, I recently left my job voluntarily after 5 years due to high stress and a large sales territory. This was a medical sales job, as well as mounting pressure to reach sales goals or else be let go. So if you resign voluntarily to focus on a new opportunity, is it best to be honest about that? Or is it easier to just say you were let go due to reorganization or company layoff?
No. Be honest, because if you weren't fired, don't say you were fired. So I just kind of freaked out there. I was because why would I would definitely say because if it's the truth is always better because you're going to be more comfortable saying the truth. And also showing you left voluntarily, that shows you're in more of a power position than you were let go. So I would never claim to be let go when you were not. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. Work-life balance is a much more popular topic now. And there's nothing wrong with saying that you wanted to focus on a different opportunity and have a different.
Right. Great. Lisa, we are at the end of our hour. I know that you had something exciting that you wanted to share with those who were attending today. Maybe you can pull up your slideshow. You had one last slide there at the end.
I do. And now, of course, I'm having a little snafu on getting back to my slide and my screen share. Give me 1 second, everyone.
Sure.
I don't know why that is happening. Oh, here we go. Okay, so I'm offering everyone,
You're almost
offering everyone a special discount if you would like to work with me. I would love to get to work with anyone who attended the webinar today. And I actually already had a duck sign up to work with me that I'm super excited about. We're meeting on Monday. So if you sign up for a career coaching session with me, you will get $75 off your first session if you sign up by Friday, November 17th. And I would really love to support everyone and help you take what we learned in this webinar and apply it to your life to land your dream job. Thank you so much. And thank you all for being here. And thank you, Megan.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lisa, for being here with us today. For those who are still here, I had shared a link to a brief event survey in our chat. I hope everyone will take a moment to provide some feedback on today's program. It is so helpful to us in the Alumni Association, in the Duck Career Network, as we plan future programs. So thank you, Lisa, for sharing your interview tips and tricks with us today. I really hope that everyone is leaving today with some tangible takeaways that you can apply to your next interview process. I will be following up with all attendees to share a recording of today's program in case you missed anything, as well as some helpful links to Lisa's coaching services and some Alumni Association resources. So with that, thank you everyone for being here today. Have a great rest of your week and go Ducks.
Go Ducks.
Bye.